is high. We still are
The expedition mapped more than 36.
The number of people experiencing homelessness doubled in 2020.
Join me, Annika Colbert, for San Diego News Now. Find us and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.
PBS, where the drama is on Sunday nights. The premiere of Call the Midwife.
My suspicions were aroused. What you are doing is criminal.
We have to find another way ahead.
And the premiere of Grantchester on Masterpiece.
You tell the truth and he's done for.
I stand to lose everything.
The premiere of Call the Midwife and the premiere of Grantchester on Masterpiece.
Sunday, starting at 8 on KPBS. You're watching KPBS. Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Friday, October 1st. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Vax one, vax them all. And with that, California is now the first in the nation to demand a vaccine mandate in all of our schools. That decision made today by the governor. More on that in a moment. But first, local healthcare workers making their voices heard this past hour, saying no to a mandate in their industry. KPBS health reporter Matt Hoffman live at Rady Children's Hospital, where a demonstration has been taking place. Matt, what is the latest?
Yeah, Maya, the state's vaccination requirement for healthcare workers is now officially in effect. And while the vast majority of people have gotten it done, there's still hundreds who have not, and they're facing possible termination or reassignment. Now, I want to show you some video from earlier today here at Rady Children's Hospital, where healthcare workers were out here voicing their displeasure with the mandate, along with others here supporting them. The requirement says healthcare workers have to be fully vaccinated or have an approved exemption request, either a medical or a religious one. And I also want to show you here where the major local health systems stand. As you can see here are some small numbers. Here at Rady Children's Hospital, about 230 staff are not in compliance. That's about 4% of the workforce here. Palomar Health has less than 100 employees. There's about 300 at Sharp and less than 100 at UC San Diego Health and Scripps. And while other health systems are granting religious and medical exemptions, Rady Children's Hospital officials say they are not for staff that work directly with patients. Instead, they're offering them other jobs that do not involve hands-on care.
I'm working with them to see if there's a position, and then I'm not really sure what I'm going to do after that. I'm going to have to reevaluate for my family what's next, considering going to a children's hospital that accepted exemptions. We want to stay taking care of patients. I don't want to be doing chart auditing. You know, that's not what I went to school for.
Now, I asked that healthcare worker if it's completely off the table to get vaccinated and then return to work. She said for now it is, and because she previously had the virus and still has some lingering effects, wants to consult with her doctor some more. Now, many other local healthcare systems are opting to put non-compliant employees on unpaid leave for a month or two. That's where they'll have some time to get vaccinated or apply for an exemption before facing termination. And we know that the state is not backing down from this mandate. They say it is critically important to protect both healthcare workers and patients inside of these hospitals, and the state says they will be enforcing it. Here at Rady Children's Hospital, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
And now to California, becoming the first state in the nation to require all eligible students to be vaccinated for COVID-19. KPBS education reporter MG Perez tells us the first deadline could come as early as New Year's Day.
We want to end this pandemic. We are all exhausted by it.
That's something most Californians can agree with. Now comes the announcement from Governor Newsom of a statewide mandate requiring students to be vaccinated for COVID-19. The mandate also goes for adults who work in schools and have contact with students. It's the latest effort to save lives and stop the coronavirus.
And if that's the intention, to keep us healthy and safe and get our economy moving and get our kids back with all the benefits of being in-person instruction, then all I say is let's get this done and let's get others to follow suit.
The California mandate goes in effect only after full FDA approval of the vaccine for a particular student group. Phase 1 of the governor's plan includes all eligible students in grades 7 through 12 and all school employees who work with any grade level. The full approval is expected in November, so students would have to have completed their COVID shots regimen by January 1st. That's for public and private schools.
One size cannot fit all, with one caveat, and that is baseline expectations. And that's what we're providing here as a baseline expectation, but with the flexibility.
The governor's mandate provides needed support for San Diego Unified's vaccine mandate for students 16 years and up that was approved on Tuesday. Board President Richard Barrera says this state mandate is critical.
Making sure that we've got a statewide standard, I think, is absolutely helpful.
Come on, y'all, one of my favorite patriots in San Diego.
There are plenty of San Diegans who want the choice whether to vaccinate their children and not be forced to do it. Hundreds of them rallied Tuesday evening on the lawn of the school administration building before the board made its decision online. In that crowd was a young voice who wanted to be heard. 10-year-old Annabelle Wheatcroft held her sign proudly, supporting vaccinations.
We can't just take up our entire childhood stuck inside. And I just think they're very important to keep people healthy so the rates don't go up again and so we don't have to go back into quarantine.
Again, something most Californians can agree with. MG Perez, KPBS News.
Changes will be made to local police departments after landmark laws were signed by Governor Newsom. KPBS reporter Christina Kim says local advocates are eager to see more changes.
During the protests in La Mesa in 2020, police used projectiles to subdue the crowd. A police beanbag hit Leslie Fulcron, a 59-year-old grandmother, hospitalizing her for a week. Those events led San Diego Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez to author AB 48. It explicitly prohibits police from using rubber bullets, beanbags, and tear gas during a protest unless someone's life is in danger or it's a last resort in a crowd to quell a dangerous situation.
It would have been nice if they had done that a long time ago, but I think it's an important step moving forward to protect, citizens of the United States who are practicing their right to freedom of speech and to protest and all of these things.
Khalid Alexander is a founder of Pillars of the Community, a local nonprofit that's been advocating for police reform for years. He's relieved to see the new law after a nearly replica bill failed to pass last year. But he also doesn't think it's enough.
As somebody who believes that there are deep-seated problems in our systems of policing and law enforcement in this country, there are very few kind of laws that I think go far enough. Having said that, I think it's important that we celebrate all of the steps, no matter how small and how incremental they are.
Police need better training on how and when to use lethal weapons, but they shouldn't be banned. So says Travis Norton, a police use of force trainer who specializes in less lethal weapons.
If these tools are banned, it returns us to batons or lethal force. And one of the questions I ask when someone says, we want to ban impact munitions or chemical munitions is, okay, well, what's the alternative? And really, there's been no major breakthroughs for us in the last 20 years.
He says less lethal projectiles are unpredictable, and so the risk of injury is high. That's why police need better equipment and better training.
You need to start to infuse decision-making exercises into your training. It's not okay just to go out to the range and fire off a couple of impact munitions and call it a day and say that that's a great training program. No, let's talk about, hey, the decision to even fire in the first place.
Another law could have big impacts on local police. SB 2 gives the state's police commission the power to decertify officers for wrongdoing. That means they can't easily get a new job at a different police department. Alexander says this type of accountability is long past due.
Being able to hold police accountable, just like holding any professional accountable for misconduct, for committing crimes, and not allowing them to continue to be hired, I think is another very, very important first step.
Until now, California was just one of 4 states that didn't have a decertification process. Cristina Kim, KPBS News.
A historic backlog of cargo ships off Southern California has led to warnings of a crisis. As KPBS reporter Alexandra Rangel found out, the Port of San Diego is working to provide some relief.
Dozens of cargo ships loaded with material and packaged goods are waiting in line to dock at the port in Los Angeles and Long Beach, 2 of the busiest ports in the country. Greg Borose with the Port of San Diego says the ports of LA and Long Beach are suffering from a chronic backlog that has developed over the years.
It's a combination of the upsizing of the vessels, the consolidation of vessel strings amongst the global carriers.
He says COVID has increased delays.
There have been some issues with manning and staffing, not only here in the United States, but also overseas. For instance, some of the ports in Asia, as soon as they get 1 or 2 cases of COVID, they shut down the entire port.
The Port of San Diego doesn't have the same capabilities as the bigger ports, but Borose says it is equipped to handle some freighters, and they've been helping LA where they can.
We've received roughly 4 to 5 container vessels specifically, and that's been in the past 2 to 3 months. But then we've had a whole host of other types of vessels since February.
They plan to continue helping unload cargo as long as it doesn't affect operations at home.
It's very important for the Port of San Diego to make sure that we cover our existing anchor accounts, that we don't stretch the labor too thin, because that's part of the issue that they're dealing with up in Long Beach and Los Angeles, is that they're really stretched thin with all this volume.
Borose doesn't foresee a crisis at consumer stores, but says the delays will affect some retailers.
Some of them are going to be in better shape than others, and it really depends upon the supply chain that particular retailer has in place.
As shipping and transportation delays are expected, big box stores like Costco have reinstated purchase limits on items like toilet paper and water in order to ensure essential items remain on the shelves. Alexandra Rangel, KPBS News.
Summer's hot temperatures have not left Southern California for the fall. As KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson explains, the region experienced record heat and the trend is expected to continue.
The United States had the warmest January to June period on record this year, and Southern California's summer was among the hottest as well.
Places like Borrego Springs, Palm Springs, even in some of our mountain areas like Palomar Mountain, and even up to Big Bear, where a lot of people spend time in the winter and summer vacationing. All those areas also saw the hottest June, the hottest July on record.
San Diego has seen a trend of record-setting temperatures over the last 100 years. Most of those records represent new high temperatures. That warming trend is also showing up in historical fall temperatures. San Diego seeing about 12.5 more days of above-average normal temperatures per year since the 1970s. Hotter years usually mean drought, but Tardy says there's been an interesting change recently.
Regardless of it being, a dry winter or a dry season, we call it here in Southern California, or a wet one, we've continued, once we get into the warm season, to see these elevated temperatures and in a lot of cases record temperatures between June and October.
It's as if the pool table is tilted towards one pocket, and that pocket is the warm pocket.
Dan Kayan is a climate researcher. He says the planet is adjusting to all the carbon that people have put into the atmosphere and ocean.
Probably under the best of circumstances in the ensuing half century or so, we are on this track. Even if we totally curtailed greenhouse gas emissions today, the planet is still not in balance as far as the heat coming in and the heat going up.
Kayan says stopping greenhouse gas emissions can help avert the worst of the projected warming outcomes. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Let's take a look at our weather headlines as we take you into the weekend. Well, it looks like our Santa Ana winds diminishing. The flow turns a little bit onshore, but we'll have a ridge of high pressure overhead, and that will warm us into the weekend. Next week, a trough will start to move in. That could bring us some showers by Tuesday, and it does look like some cooler air will be on the way. For now, though, we are dry. Look at the water vapor loop. Look at all that yellow. That indicates dry conditions, and as we check the radar route for you, well, we have bone dry conditions here too. As we look at our forecast for tonight, just a few clouds, a nice night. We're down to 63 degrees. Taking a look at temperatures, Oceanside drops down to 53, Mount Laguna 51, Borrego Springs 65 degrees. Air quality, not the best this weekend, as we do show you the air quality here on the moderate side. Worst conditions up through the Central Valley. Temperatures for tomorrow rising into low 80s in San Diego. El Cajon hits the 90s, and around Mount Laguna 66 degrees. Here's your weekend weather. High pressure overhead, dry, a little bit on the warm side. Next week this trough will approach, and that eventually brings some cooling and a few showers. So here's the coastal forecast for you. Next 5 days, warm for the weekend, shower possible Tuesday, and notice not as warm middle of next week. As we head inland, very warm for the weekend, low 90s. Could see that shower chance Tuesday, certainly not as warm. And as we take you into the mountains, so we'll be running in the 60s and then cool 50s for the middle of next week. And in the deserts, low 90s, plenty of sunshine. Could see a storm of the prowl on Tuesday. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
The wars are over, but the battle has just started for many troops dealing with injuries. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh shares one Marine's story.
I started working out again. I've gotten healthy. I don't have that dark cloud over me that I used to have.
I met Cooper Williams just as the sun was coming up outside a coffee house an hour north of San Diego. He sounded upbeat. Last December, he'd been worried about being kicked out of the Marines after 17 years.
Am I going to lose everything? Is my family, are we going to be put out after 18 years without any insurance, any assistance based off of everything that I went through and all the mitigating circumstances? Yeah, that was taxing on myself and my family.
He'd been spiraling. After multiple deployments, including Iraq and Afghanistan, he was self-medicating. A horrific family tragedy had made things worse when his parents were involved in a murder-suicide. Williams asked for help. He entered a Wounded Warrior Battalion at Camp Pendleton, where Marines are treated for mental and physical injuries. But in the space of 1 month, he racked up 2 DUIs. He faced dismissal from the Corps.
From the time of the incident till now, it's been about 1 year and 8 months.
His attorney sent letters to his command showing Williams wasn't receiving the proper medication, but he still faced being discharged. Then, earlier this year, Williams was told one of the generals in charge of his case changed his mind. Lieutenant General Ed Banta now thought Williams should be allowed to retire.
You know, there's a lot that was going on at that time, both medication-wise, personal-wise, dealing with the death of my parents, dealing with some things.
But it wasn't over. Williams was still required to face a board of inquiry. The process hung over him for 20 months until a panel of 3 officers recently ruled in his favor.
So it feels very good to have the weight lifted off of your shoulder and the cloud of the unknown and the fear of the unknown, because that weighing over you within itself is a very emotionally taxing thing, I guess, even for you and your family. So very glad.
And if you have someone who's suffering from mental health or TBI issues, they're likely to commit more misconduct.
Esther Liebenfarth is with the National Veterans Legal Services Program. She says the military typically doesn't reverse itself even in cases where service-related medical conditions play a role in the misconduct. Liebenfarth says the Marines and other services need a single set of rules so troops with TBI or traumatic brain injuries or PTSD don't go through a long process where they risk losing everything.
Because it's a symptom of their mental health condition. They're likely to hurt themselves. They're likely to have other adverse effects if you're 2 years just waiting to find out what's going to happen to you. And without proper treatment, without being able to move on to your life.
In a letter obtained by KPBS, the new commander of Wounded Warrior Battalion West, Lieutenant Colonel Rebecca Harvey, says Williams did not receive proper treatment initially. She revealed that mental health resources have gone down more than 50% at a time when the Marines are seeing more cases like Williams. She added, Marines like Chief Warrant Officer Williams have served for many years, often ignoring their injuries to ensure they can deploy when asked. We owe them more. Between his treatment and the separation process, she says, the Marine Corps failed Williams. For his part, Williams is ready to move on with his life.
It made me better as a person. It made me dig deep into find out who I am inside and who I am and how I'm going to respond, because there's two different ways you can respond in those situations. You can either go darker or you can come into the light.
Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
And it was a special day for a group of local veterans taking off on the first honor flight in 2 years. 94 veterans from the Korean War and World War II are in Washington, D.C. to visit memorials created to honor them and those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Our media partner KGTV was there as the veterans got ready to leave from the San Diego International Airport.
I'm so excited. It's just going to be wonderful to see everyone and all together. I love it. I love it.
And this weekend's flight includes decorated service members and 7 veterans over the age of 100. They'll receive a hero's welcome home at the airport on Sunday afternoon. Starting today, if you're waiting for something in the mail, it might take a while longer. SDSU's Miro Kopik explains why the Postal Service is slowing things down in the Friday Business Report.
Next day and 2-day shipping nationwide.
Beginning today, first-class mail, about 40% of the first-class mail is going to be impacted, where the standard of delivery for mail being sent across the country is about 3 days. That's going to be pushed out to 5 days for, first-class letters, documents, bills being sent from, let's say, New York to California. Local mail, that's still going to have its 2-day standard. And the reason why this is happening is that this is part of the U.S. Postal Service's plan under the Postmaster Louis DeJoy to reduce $160 billion loss that the post office has accrued over the years. It will disproportionately affect seniors who rely on the mail much more than other segments of the population and rural areas. And so beginning certainly with your November mail and bills, you're going to start seeing delays in receiving that. So making sure that all consumers are paying attention to when they're receiving their bills or their checks.
Over the weekend, Diversionary Theater opened its door to a newly renovated building and its first live performance in more than a year. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando takes us backstage.
Diversionary Theater returns to live performances with the West Coast premiere of Danye R. Love's 1 and 2.
1 and 2 is the story of 3 queer black men sort of traveling through the time of learning about their HIV diagnosis and all of the reverberations of that knowledge.
So let's play. An HIV positive man walks into a bar.
It's a play that tackles a serious topic, but with humor, heartfelt emotions, and some cold, hard facts, says Associate Director Frankie Alicia Ford.
And something the playwright Danye Love really talks about is the statistic from a 2016 CDC study that said 1 in 2 queer black men will be diagnosed with HIV in their lifetimes, specifically gay or bisexual black men, which is an incredibly alarming statistic, and a statistic that would probably be spoken a lot more were it affecting a different community. And so this play really works to shine light on that information and sort of challenges folks to do something.
Executive Artistic Director Matt Morrow chose 1 and 2 as the play to return to live performances with, because the themes have special significance for diversionary theater.
Diversionary was founded in 1986 at the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and so reopening the space, it's really great to re-engage with our founding momentum. And also bring light to this very important issue affecting our queer African-American community.
And I think it becomes an obligation of us to continue that conversation, especially right now, when there's so much going on, and yet this is still happening at such an alarming rate.
Wait. Shouldn't we tell them like who we are so that they don't just see us as a number.
The play is also exceptionally theatrical. It can only happen in a live theatrical space where there's an audience and live actors engaging in real time.
So let's have the audience decide.
It's the kind of play, the kind of story that can only be told in a theater in terms of the style of the play.
That style involves the audience deciding which of the three actors plays which role, says director Delicia Turner Sonnenberg.
The biggest challenge is that any of the actors can play any of the roles at any time.
I like this role. Okay. So then, you're number 2.
Okay. Let's get this show on the road.
It's this incredibly theatrical device where the audience picks who's going to be the main character. And so rehearsing it, figuring out how to give everybody an opportunity to play all the roles and staging it has been the biggest challenge.
I mean, the words stay the same, but the story changes every time in a way that's really exciting. You know, it keeps you on the front of your seat, and I imagine folks are going to want to see it multiple times to see the different variations that this world can look like.
It's a very ambitious play, so I'm proud that we're even doing it in the first place. And I am most proud of the actors who are working so hard, because it's that rare opportunity as artists where we have the opportunity to literally save somebody's life with the work that we're doing. If you play number 2,
I think Delicia Turner Sonnenberg, the director, has worked some incredible magic on the stage, and these actors have brought this to life in a way that is surprising and inspiring, considering they've had 4 weeks to really get it on its feet.
The play has been in preview performances, with its opening night this Saturday, and that's exciting.
There's something that's really special that happens when a bunch of folks gather in a theater. Your heartbeats sync up, your exhales all start to align, and you have a really magical moment.
And having an audience live and in person makes a difference.
Theater is about the people who tell the story and the people who witness the story. So having witnesses back in the seats is an essential part of our art. And so that I am so grateful that we are starting to do that again.
1 and 2 runs through October 24th on Diversionary's newly remodeled and expanded main stage. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Tonight on KPBS. At 8, news analysis from the Capitol on Washington Week. Then key stories from the region with the KPBS News team. And later, follow a complex doctor on Doc Martin. That's tonight on KPBS.
PBS, where the drama is on Sunday nights. The premiere of Call the Midwife.
My suspicions were aroused. What you are doing is